This is what makes retail efficient. Everything in neat lines, organised, on shelves, available there, all full, all ready for the customer to come in, take what they want, pay and go. All about efficiency. And this is what food service is about. It's about making people feel good, making people feel that they are valued, and that there's a high degree of hospitality and personalisation involved. And it strikes me that those two pictures epitomise the difference between retail and food service. And unless you understand the difference between the two sectors, you're going to be making the wrong sorts of decisions in terms of investment, in terms of how you approach the market, in terms of marketing, and so on. Well, the first thing is getting people through the door, and that really depends on having the right location and having the right people in your outlet, in your store, the people there who make the customer feel welcome. Another crucial imperative is getting the markup right, the gross profit based on your food and drink purchases. Right now, and it's not only in the UK, discounting is taking place, driving that gross profit down, and I'll show you some more about that shortly. And it's also important to control costs of labour, food and beverage, and labour and food and beverage between them account for nearly 2/3 of food service operator costs. So labour is about 1/3, food and beverage is about 1/3, the rest is fuel and real estate and capital equipment and so on. And finally, an important issue in order to drive all the benefits forward is getting some sort of scale. I've talked about this industry being peopled, if that's the right word, by a lot of small players, but the drive is to get bigger through branding, through internationalization, and through growing buying power, perhaps by clubbing together with a number of like-minded organizations. And there are 5 key drivers out of all of this that we've identified. In looking at this in the context of the various demographics in different countries, the different cultures, and the range of economic developments, each of these factors work, but they work in different ways. There's the demand side of the whole market, and people, those are customers, they eat out and have meals when they eat out. So what's the crucial issue here? It's the meals per person, which may be driven by hunger. I'm hungry, so I'm going to eat. Or I may be planning to eat out. Or I may have no option. I may be a prisoner in prison, or I may be a pupil at school. We also have an issue with costs, and looking much closer to home, and over the more immediate term, over the last 2 or 3 years, if you look at food costs of the purple line, you can see that they started rising in the early part of 2008, and started falling again in the middle of 2009. Selling prices, that's the green line, went up a bit in 2008, but have dropped off steadily since then. Now, bearing in mind that food is 1/3 of all of selling prices, what happens with food inflation is clearly important. And so we measure the difference between those two colours, and we end up with the black line, which we call the margin squeeze, which is an imperfect measure of what's happening to the balance sheet, but it gives a pretty good idea, not necessarily in scale, but in context, that the balance sheets have been very badly hit in the food service sector through 2008, well into 2009. The good news is it's getting a little bit better, but inflation may come back again, at least in some small way, and so the opportunity to build balance sheets in the food service sector amongst operators is relatively limited at the moment, particularly since there's a lot of heavy discounting going on. For the longer term, will it ever settle down? Will all this change settle down? No, it won't. This is one of the great joys of the food service market. It invents and reinvents itself. Burgers, pizzas, coffee shops, they've all come up in the last 50 years. There will be others. In 50 years' time, probably we won't be eating burgers. Don't take that as a forecast. I'm just trying to make a point. the market constantly evolves. Sales are growing long term, purchases are growing, but they're growing far slower than sales, so the operator is trying to get more of that margin, keep more of that margin, and is slowly driving the markup upwards. And the number of meals is growing, and it's growing faster than either purchases or sales. In other words, the amount spent per meal is reducing. And that is partly because operators are getting cuter, customers are getting cuter, and it's also because the product mix is changing in favour of cheaper meals. But whatever happens, the market is a global one with commonalities between markets and differences, but a lot of commonalities. A lot of innovation, providing test bed for food service suppliers, for FMCG companies, for operators, for distributors. It gives the opportunity to interact with the consumer on every meal occasion. And long term, it's a growth market. I think the final message that I've got is that this is a sector that is different from retail. It's a first cousin, if you like. It requires a different mindset if you're an FMCG company. And in order to be successful in it, you need to be able to understand those differences and use them to your advantage. And it also means that if for an FMCG company to apply its metrics, its way of thinking, its marketing to the food service market, it's difficult to make that work because the food service market is different. So my message for FMCG companies, and if there are any in the room, it's directed directly at them, is to treat the food service market on its own terms, to sell as the market requires, not as the systems within your supply company dictates, and treat the market in its own way, and it will repay you with growth and innovation. Thank you very much.